All right, so let's look at the broad trends and themes for Unit 3. America and national identity. As you can see, there's a lot. This is quite tumultuous. The Northeast is going to see a lot of attempts at social change with only really some limited success. The South is going to solidify the racial and economic base of their society. Keep an eye on these differences, the North and the South, because that's going to build into Unit 4, where we're ultimately going to have the Civil War. So right now we're watching things start to solidify. There aren't quite the tensions of ripping apart yet, but they're solidifying their differences. There is the growing identity of a Western person. This is a rough, fiercely pro-American and land-hungry individual. We're going to see this pop up with the War of 1812, and we're going to see them playing an impact in the Senate and the House of Representatives. They're going to start to kind of steer how America is going to view the land that we'll ultimately be taking in Unit 4. So again, we're kind of setting the scene here for what's going to be happening in Unit 4. Now that's not to diminish the stuff in Unit 3. It's important for us to see how these things get laid, but this is ultimately what this foundation is going towards. There is a growing concept of being an American, which would make sense as America is getting a little bit older, and you're starting to see this creation of a new generation of people who are truly American in that they are not from England. You're going to see a sense of nationalism coupled with that growing idea of being an American, especially after the War of 1812. You'll start to see art and writing exemplify the beauty of America. And again, that's a way for America to start forming an American identity. So kind of for the first time, we're building a sense of what it is to be an American. Now, it's important to keep in mind, being an American means you have a specific status in society. So it's important to keep in mind who at this time is not deemed at having status or isn't able to participate in the status realm. Politics and power. The big question in this unit is going to be, what can the federal government do? We're coming out of a time period where we made the Articles of Confederation and then we're like, oh crap, let's make the Constitution. And so there is this question of what's the things the states do, what's the thing the federal governments do. So this clash over the balance of power between state and federal government is really going to solidify here. And it's not done. We're going to see that pop up again and again and again and again. And I mean, let's look in 2020, it's still here. However, we will see a clear shift start going towards the federal government having more power. So we're still having these conversations, but we're going to see the shift continue towards the federal government side. Work exchange and technology. There's an explosion of coordination and specialization thanks to inventions. So when we say coordination, you're going to see the North, the South, and the West solidify an economic policy to themselves, or expertise, shall we say, and then link themselves together to work coordinatedly. The North is going to create a textile haven, and it will increase the industrial capacity of America. So when we think manufacturing and textiles, we're going to think the North. The West is going to be producing the food for the country. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you're going to see them be so land hungry. And the South is going to grow the cotton needed for northern industry. There will be rapid road and infrastructure growth to kind of tie them together. The South is specifically going to be able to do this cotton growth because of a specific invention, the cotton gin, that we'll of course talk about. And again, these roads and this infrastructure will be to tie the nation together. So we're starting to see this forming of a federal country like America. We're breaking a little bit out of the North, the South, and the West, but not fully. We're starting to link these economies together, and they are dependent upon each other, but that's not really addressing the social impact and the social divide between these areas. Culture and society. You're going to see reform movements grow and explode throughout the country, specifically focusing in the Northeast. That's where most of them will be. They are attempts to try and fix the flaws of society. And these are primarily going to be based on Christianity. We're going to see the Second Great Awakening and another shift towards Christianity. And start kind of thinking about those playing together. The idea of Christianity forming in with what we want to fix the society. There are early attempts at abolition to get rid of slavery. There's early attempts at women's rights, but these will fall short. Women are going to start to shift to be viewed essentially as domestic, and they're going to lose a lot of that status and place they had in society during the colonial era and moving on upward. We're going to see Republican motherhood shift away and be replaced with the cult of domesticity. Legal power is going to be created that will allow men to dominate in society. Migration and settlement. We'll see an influx of whites moving west, We talked about that in national identity, the idea of what is this Western person. Keep an eye on that. Demand for land is going to lead to stripping land from Native Americans. This doesn't just happen in the West, it also happens in what we would call the East, like in Georgia. And there will be forceful removal of these Native Americans if it's required. Environment and geography. Cotton production leads to increased demand for land in the Deep South, which is capable of growing cotton. This is going to play a tremendous impact on kicking out Native Americans, increase in the use of slavery, increase on the dependency of slavery, increase in power for the South economically. So because you have the land and the option with the invention of the cotton gin to be growing cotton, you're going to see that explode across the Deep South. This will lead to a significant spread of slavery and an increase in plantation-style farming. And pay attention to how that is going to trickle out into society. A huge part of America in general is basing society off of economics. And so when economics change, you can see society change. But it's really hard to change society without changing economics. And the last one is America and the world. We have an odd spat with England that'll lead to the War of 1812. That's kind of weird. That will lead to a significant period of isolation where we're going to isolate ourselves and stay away from getting involved in other countries' affairs. We are going to actually create a precedent for that where we want to focus on what we will know as the continental United States and stick to our half of the world or the Western Hemisphere. And we will use treaties along the way to define borders and to acquire new land.